'tis many's a gay night, from dark till daylight, I spend with people of high renown. But in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for sweet Omagh town.
Hello and a very warm welcome to you, and delighted to have your company here on Sweet Omagh Town, internet radio from the heart of Omagh. Contact us by Facebook.
And Declan Ford here. Our special guest is none other than the one and only Mr. Derrick Mehaffey. Derrick, absolutely fantastic to have you here today to talk about music, which is the love of your life, I would say.
Second love.
Second love.
My good wife, first journey. Music second.
Oh, well said.
Oh, indeed, that's very diplomatic.
Well trained.
Well, talk to me about music. I mean, your lifetime in music. How did it start?
Well, first of all, I lost a big part in between because of my commitment to the family business, being an only son. I had a number of years that I had to stop travelling and playing, and when I should have been probably doing it. But it started off, I suppose we all met up when we started at Omagh Academy, and the band originally were all based in Omagh, as you know, the small group. I suppose we're talking about, should we mention years?
Please do. The early 60s, would it?
People start to count.
What else?
My wife always says to me, never say what year you saw Jim Reeves in the Royal Arms, because everybody can count.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was 1962 or thereabouts that we were playing as a four-piece, but I suppose I was fascinated when I saw, we forgot our first TV, black and white TV, saw Cliff singing Move It in 58. I think it was then, that time anyway, around that time. It was the first time I saw him on TV. I was very fascinated. So we wanted to be something similar to the Shadows, and Mervyn Martin played guitar, and Richard McCracken played guitar, and Raymond Bradley played guitar, and sadly Raymond passed away last May, I believe, when I was away on tour in Sweden and Denmark.
Right.
And I came back to discover that he passed away. He was our first drummer.
Right.
And we got all that together, and people had us playing, and I suppose all sorts of charity events, and the Ulster Savings. I have a poster at home. I think it was about £1 to get in or something like this. The Legion, British Legion, church events and church socials, and we did all those things. And then we progressed that we realised we fancied some of the pop music, and we fancied things like Sounds Incorporated, who had a lineup, as you probably know, of instrumental musicians who played baritone, tenor, and they had a sound, I suppose, not unlike what the Plattermen were, and we fancied that sort of thing. So we added a couple more people, and at that stage my brother-in-law Ralph Lyons came in to play baritone and tenor, and Bill McCracken played tenor saxophone and flute. They lived in Campsie, and Richard McCracken played guitar, and Mervyn Martin then would have been the drummer. It changed around a bit. But we used to rehearse in a shed up Jimmy Devlin's. Do you remember Devlin's shop down in Campsie? I think Jack Martin had stuff stored in it. And Dr. Mitchell, Haldane Mitchell, would come over and record bits of it and try and point us in the right direction to see if we were too loud or playing the right things. I was playing a little event on Wednesday, and he was there, and I reminded him of that, and he said, I can't remember that, that's that long ago.
Well, what music did you play then? Can you remember any of the standout songs?
The sort of things out of the charts would have been doing, and I suppose a lot of the rock and roll things that we did were a whole lot of shaking and sea cruise and that type of thing. But then I would always have had a leaning towards a lot of the country music. I liked Crispy and St. Peter, and he did Almost Persuaded one time, and I'd have been doing that. And then Richard Sharp was brought in to play bass, and he was into doing Book of One stuff. Richard lived in Omagh as well, and some of the fellas in the band didn't particularly like country, but I had to do a certain amount of pop stuff. If any Cliff things came out or Elvis things, I got doing that. And we progressed then, and we got a manager in Port Stewart because we happened to play in the Strand Ballroom, and they liked what we were doing, a man called Bobby Platt. And the result of that was that we got extra work in Belfast through Jim Aiken and Trevor Kane and round Kilray, Paul, all the dances that were around. And our in-between times, to get even started at what we were doing as the six-piece at that time, we got opening in front of the Royal Showband and the INF or in the Royal Arms. maybe Joe Dolan, all the big bands, we would be standing watching them and wondering what can we do here that they're doing to get it right till we get playing. And I have to say, I think some of the teachers at the academy took a rather dim view of the idea of going down the road of going into a show band when you were supposed to be getting educated.
Did you aspire at that time to becoming a professional musicians? Or?
Well, I really enjoyed my music. Having said that, when I was younger, my father would have taught me how to play the accordion, which I didn't play too well. And then I took music lessons, but I never was that keen on the theory part. I liked to try and do the bits and pieces by ear. But then once I saw Cliff and the Shadows doing their thing, and the fact that we got together and were playing, and we probably didn't sound anything like Cliff and the Shadows, but we tried. We got these little dates coming on and the socials things we're doing, and we were doing Billy Fury songs. Margot was one of the ones, and Send Me the Pillow That You Dream On. The sort of things that were popular at the time. But then anyway, this Bobby Platt man we got a TV show. We were doing school dances because of our age. At the time, we'd have done the high school, we'd have done Omagh Academy, we did the tech dance in Enniskillen. And BBC did a documentary thing on us one time there, just about that time too. I don't know whether it was the contacts of Bobby Platt or whatever, but they did it, and that was all a great help to us and great encouragement. And funny, one of the songs I remember doing in that was Save the Last Dance for Me. Then Ray Gurley was brought into the band. He lived out Hospital Road, and Ray would have done a lot of pop stuff. And then Damien Given was brought in as things changed, and we became a 7-piece then. And Damien played trumpet and French horn and keyboard, and as you all know, very musical, talented man. When we started to record, he and Ray wrote songs, and then Damien wrote songs on their own. But then we were getting into the circuit, and things were going reasonably well. And we got offered a 3-week stint in Hamburg, Germany in '68. And we'd never been anywhere, only England and Scotland and all over Ireland. So we went off and we did that. And that was an experience because it was 7 nights a week from 7 o'clock in the evening until 3 a.m. in the morning.
And having read the Beatles experience there a few years earlier, was it a grind? It
was a grind in so much that you got 15 minutes off in the hour, but you had to be there to play from 7 in the evening until 3 a.m. in the morning. And it was a small club-like place, not what we were used to playing in. But a very interesting thing happened, at least what I thought was very interesting. When we arrived, after having driven from here to Belfast, got the boat, then down through England, got the boat again, and got off at Rotterdam, and we were driving up to Hamburg. And we get there, and the accommodation wasn't going to be very good, and we weren't that happy, so we said maybe we should go home again. So then he decided he had an apartment above the building with 2 bedrooms, and that was fine. He gave us that, very sparse. But on the first night after we'd been there, we're just getting ready to go down, knock at the door. I opened the door, and these 2 men were standing, one of them very long hair, didn't mean anything to me. I said, look, we're from Ireland. There was a Vox amplifier sitting. I only found out afterwards who it was. We know you're from Northern Ireland, but saw the cars. We had 2 Vauxhall cars at the time. We lost all our money. We need to get to Bremen. We had a guy with us from Marifelt who used to go to the band. He was driving, so we said, okay, if you can pay the petrol, he'll run you along. So we said, we just about could do that, but we have no other money. So we drove him off, and I found out afterwards it was Rory Gallagher and another fellow that was with him, I forget his name, and they had lost everything in one of the clubs they were in Hamburg and had no money to get home. Sure, he didn't remember me, but I remember who it was. Yeah. And then the strange thing about that, a few years later, Richard McCracken and John Wilson, at a later stage, which we'll get to, left the band, formed a band called Cheese, and the next thing they were playing with Rory Gallagher. So it's quite a coincidence. But the German thing, anyway, we did that, and when we came back, we were playing some of these events. Bobby Platt was the manager of the Strand Ballroom on behalf, I think Sammy Barr was in the group, and Trevor Kane and Jim Aiken. And another man, I can't remember his name, they had the Boom Boom Room, that was called something else at that time, and they owned a lot of things. Things were starting to move along, and we were getting to play with all these big acts, which for us was incredible. And the Astoria Bundoran, we probably wouldn't have got into at that stage, but we got to play with the Tremolos. We got to play in the Silver Slipper in Enniskillen with the Everly Brothers. We got to play with the Trogs in Port Stewart. A lot of people like that, Lulu and Ballymena, the Righteous Brothers, I think it was, Roger Whittaker, various people like that. It was a great experience to see all this
What was the band's image at the time? You know, can you
We would
remember?
have been counting ourselves pretty pop. I suppose we were called a pop band at the time, and we were probably pushing against the tide because not a lot has changed over the last years. The country and easy listening or country dance bands would still be what works in a lesser way here. Some are very successful, but at that time you had Big Tom and Larry Cunningham and Philomena Begley, all highly successful. And okay, you had the Miami and the Sands, and I suppose the Nevada, and ourselves probably. But during this time of us doing this, we were obviously making a little bit of ground, and we were approached by Top Line Promotions in Dublin in 1968, just the end of the time when we came back from Germany, and they offered us to manage us because the Capital Showband had just left them, and the manager of the Miami was Tom Doherty, and Jim Doherty was the Capital manager. So we thought, this is pretty good. We got a solicitor to look through our agreement and all this sort of stuff, and signed up. And it worked at the beginning because they were involved in all these. There was an Associated Ballrooms which was owned by Colin Hines. That was like 22 halls. But his idea was that you set a figure and everybody pays for the same figure, which a lot of the bands didn't play for that reason, because he wanted to control how the payment was going to be. And then there was the Reynolds Ballrooms.
Yes.
The former Taoiseach Albert Reynolds.
Reynolds, yes. I remember.
And they were much more generous, and we started off playing in Ruski and playing all their halls because this Top Line Promotions would have had the Miami show band, and everywhere they played, we'd have played carnivals all over the place. And then we were playing the Palindrome Strabane one night, setting up the gear. And this man came walking up to me, and very mannerly person, and said to me, "You don't know me, but my name is Ray Doherty. I think he played in the Melody Aces." And he said, "Oh, I'd been to the band a few times and I've written you a song. I wonder would you listen to it?" And nobody had ever come to me with a song before, so I thought I had arrived. Right. So anyway, the song was called The Power of Love, and we took it home and listened to it, and we thought, well, it's pretty close to what we do. And we took it then to the management in Dublin. So they engaged a man called Peter Lee Sterling, and everybody would know him as Daniel Boone, A Beautiful Sunday, Daddy Don't You Walk So Fast. He became our producer, and we go down to him in Andrew's studio, and we do the recording on the 2-track reel to reel.
That was in Dublin?
In Dublin.
Yeah.
Henry Street. You get it right or you have to start again. So we were able to do the two songs. We did one song that it was an old Cliff Bennett song. I don't know who else did it. I'll Take You Home as a B-side, and The Power of Love. And he recognised that when we were into the Sounds Incorporated thing, and a bit like the Alan Price job, and he put down all the tracks with the band playing. It's the actual band singing and playing on it. He took it off to England, and strange, he explained to me one time what he did is, besides that, I think it was a bass trombone in it, there's a heavy offbeat on it, and I thought he'd added another drum, and what it was, he told me, was one of those little stool things that you sit on with a padded top, and it put in a great thud, and he thought it was a good sound, and that's what they were dancing to.
Yes.
So he added that and mixed the whole thing and sent it back, and it entered the charts eventually, but we got a lot of airplay with it, and we would have been in the most played songs for so long, and that got it started off in the recording end.
Did you do the arranging all yourselves?
No. We had a basic idea of what was on the original copy that Ray Doherty had given us, but then we left it to Peter Lee Sterling to decide when he knew what we were able to do and what he thought the market needed.
What year was that the Power of Love came out?
That was 69.
Oh, right. We'll play it, sure. Yeah. When we're here. Okay. Once again, you're listening to Sweet Omagh Town with our guest, Derrick Mehaffey. Good to have you with us. La 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 la.
Your heart may never be
Power of Love, and I'm talking to the great Derrick Mehaffey. Derrick, in the band, were you the front man with the rapport with the audience, or did the other members of the band have a rapport, or was it down to yourself to be the face and the sound of the band?
Well, I think when we got the management, Bobby Platt and Port Stewart, and the other people that were involved in the top line in Dublin, they decided you had to have someone on focus. I played a bit of piano, not that well, or box organ, but I played it when I was taught the chords and whatever. But Damien Given would have played it when he wasn't playing an instrument, and then I'd have been out singing, and then Ray Gurley and I would have done a lot of Everly Brothers songs together, but I would have been the person at the front, I suppose, image wise. And we did a lot of TV work for RTE around the time we were with them, because it's like everything else, Top Line Promotion had the contacts, they knew how to market us. We were on pictures on bus tickets, on Sweetie cigarette card packets, on you go around Dublin and big double crown posters where they were a record out or whatever it was each time, and the band, or we played all the ballrooms, and it was nice to come up to the television club and see a big line of people waiting to get in to see us and wonder what time the doors would be closed. And they liked the sort of stuff we did. And
did they put any influence on your choice of music, or was that entirely down to the
very
band?
much so. It would have been probably Tom Doherty who would have had the final decision, because I was just going to lead on to say we had a couple more singles after that. Daniel Boone then, or Peter Lee Sterling, wrote us a song called Morning Papers and Margarine, which did well for us. And then we did a cover of My Slice City, which was Alan Price. And we had a couple more singles that Damien and Ray had written, Needing You and so on. But we were then in '69, we got our first trip to Toronto, Canada, and John Gilligan invited us out there, and they were just renovating this place called the Maple Leaf Ballroom on 665 St Clair Avenue. He had a travel agency, and a lot of people from around Tyrone, but in fact from Northern Ireland and Ireland in general, were out there. And it was like playing at a local ballroom, because people come up and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were here." And they're a lot of people we knew, but we were out there for 6 weeks. And the first time we were out, it was very easy, because it's like the Americans work. He had to have a resident band, a musician, and to represent each other musician that was being brought in. Contract, he had to do everything by the board. So we had a 7-piece band, he had a 7-piece resident band. We did. They did 45 minutes break. We did 45 minutes. They did 45 minutes and break, and we did 45 minutes. That was it for 3 nights a week, and it was good. But while we were there, of course, we were tuned in at Chum 1050 Toronto, the pop station, and we heard this song Simon Says. And we thought, well, now that has to work if we brought that home. So we bring it home and leave it in the office. A week later, we're told, no, that wouldn't suit the image of the band. And months later, Dickie Rock brings it out.
The rest is history.
So we got the message. And prior to that, when we'd come home from Germany, which was just at the end of the previous year, I had come home to London. We'd ordered these suits that Paul Jones was wearing, in the Blown Privilege with the frills and all this sort of stuff. And I was back to collect them, brought them home. We were told, no, they're too flash, you can't wear those. And about 6 weeks later, we went to see the Miami one night, and they had frills in their shirts and whatever else, and then we were allowed to wear ours. But people liked that. It was a dark blue, midnight blue thing, and it was specially made. It cost a lot of money. We got them made, and we used to go to a place in Carnaby Street, and the man who ran it was Colin, somebody I never can remember his second name, but he was the original male dancer with the long red hair on Top of the Pops. And he had this super little place in Carnaby Street, and we got measured for the trousers and all the gear there. Always, that's diversion from what we're
Did you ever
about.
make Top of the Pops? Did you?
No, we got along to see it one time, but I didn't get onto it, I'm afraid. No. We nearly had a deal through, again, Top Line Promotions with a woman called Joy Nickel, who was promoting Joe Dolan. You remember all the hits that he had, Japan all over the place, Jeffrey Everett that ran Radio Luxembourg. And we did 2 songs that she had produced, one called My Guitar, and it was supposed to get high level promotion, and we were supposed to get TV and get on the Top of the Pops, but they offered us, the biggest mistake we probably made was, remember the Edison Lighthouse song Love Grows?
Love Grows, yeah. Mm-hmm.
During the time we were with her, we got a phone call. You could be on Top of the Pops Thursday night. We need 4 people out of your band, and you can mime to Love Grows and You'll Have a Hit. And we say, can't do that, we've got a 7-piece band. Can you use 7? No. So we talked and said, no, we can't do that, because we a bit of allegiance to each other.
Sure.
And that was definitely a big mistake.
Yes,
but these things happen. I don't know. I suppose I'm not sorry we did that, but it would be nice to have a success like that. It would be nice. So then the thing in Dublin, finally the scene was changing a bit and started to fall apart, and we decided we would leave, but when it came to getting out of a contract that we thought had expired, it was a different tale. We didn't end up in court, but we were close.
Yeah.
And then we were sort of on our own. But then at that time, I was getting married, and we decided we'd already been back to Canada a couple of times, and my wife and I were going to emigrate to Canada, which we did. And then I got the job singing in the resident band in the flute we used to sing in, and I did bits and pieces there of recording things for a couple of songwriters, the guitar player in the band, and a couple of other people of record companies. RCA, a man I encountered, got me to do demos and things like that. But other than that, we liked Canada, but because of my situation at home, being the only son, I had to come home to the business. And I tried playing in bands for a while. I took the job in the Conquerors. I was the singer in the Conquerors, and they're a great band. That was Colin Hines of Associated Volumes owned that, and Greg Hughes, I think he was the Offaly Gaelic player, and he was the manager. And then the Conquerors wanted to go on a different thing, into more pop music, so they decided to put me into the Royal Showband, which I was in the Royal Showband for a couple of years, and that suited me because it was showband stuff. And Barbara Dixon, who was part of Maxie Dick and Twink, she was there for a while, and it really worked well. But she was a great singer, and it suited what I did and what she did. Then that got to the stage where I was couldn't manage both jobs, and I decided, well, I'll better give up, which I did. And then Tony Lockman came to me one time and asked me would I join the Paddy Cole band along with Twink, which I did. And I did that for a couple of years, and again they went off to Canada once, and I went with them. But the touring about and the up and down, and I found I couldn't be out all the time at night and all the travelling and try to look after the shop. And my father was unwell at the time; he was ill and it became worse. So it was a case that I felt I had to stay at home. So that was the sort of experience I had with those bands. But then after there was a bit of a period in between, and I had done a tape with your brother, Don, with Seamus.
Right.
And it got a lot of airplay. In fact, I was doing a little concert for some seniors at the end of last year in Newton Stewart, and a man came up and said, do you know that song that you did, the Big Tom one? And it was on that little tape, Your Old Love Letters. And he thought that out of all the things I could sing, he asked me, and I hadn't it with me. So I have to re-record that because I don't have the backing tracks for it. But then I decided I would try to get back into the business. And I approached Tony Allen out of Foster and Allen, and I had this idea of, I saw myself as easy listening, and I thought a little concert here, but I was doing the odd church concert, and I do some gospel inspirational stuff, and I do some easy listening, and a sort of age group that I appealed to. I found just the running around and all the travelling, I couldn't do it, but I thought I could do this. So I picked out about 20 songs, and I met up with Tony Allen of Foster and Allen, and he had a very good studio in Moat, discussed the whole thing with him. And he thought I was on the right tracks, because I thought that what Foster and Allen did, what Daniel O'Donnell did, what Charlie Lansbury did, was the sort of easy listening style of stuff that I did, only I would be putting in Jim Reeves and Eddie Arnold and this sort of thing. So I got an album made, and as Tony Allen has a footnote on it, I don't think you have it there at the minute, Don, but he said that he was impressed by the quality of the type of the songs. And I then had no record company, and it cost quite a lot of money to do it, and I had no way of putting it out. So I went to Hawk Records. Somebody introduced me to Charlie Tosh, and a lot of people have all sorts of sad tales about Charlie Tosh, but as far as I'm concerned, he gave me a straightforward deal. He took a song, Stay Out of My Arms, and he mailed it out, the CD. It became my first number one in Europe, and then out of that I got my tours to Denmark and Sweden to do the country festivals a couple of times a year. And then he sold the record company, and I got my master tapes back, and he introduced me to Mike Hedrick in a little town called Kimball in Tennessee. So I phoned up Mike and told him what I was doing, and went out and I did an album with him, and he wrote me a song called Long Time No See, and it became my second number one in Europe. And there was a number of songs in it that were original, but when I was with him, a strange thing happened. Is this going on too long for you? Can I go ahead with it? My father would have been manager of the Shell oil depot around the Crevener Road, and my mother managed the office. Timester Fenton Hort owned it, subsidiary of Shellmex. But there were a number of drivers about. One of them was a man called Andy McCutcheon, sorry. And he had several sons and daughters at the model school with me on the grounds where the tech was. I went there before I went to the academy. And Nick used to call and visit my parents. But what I didn't know was they'd gone back to live in Bedford. That the youngest boy, Charles, was in Nashville. And their mother, this Mrs. McCutcheon, my mother thought, you'll have one of Derrick's CDs and take them home. And each time she came back. So after the second CD, I got a phone call one day from Charles. And he said, you don't remember me? I said, no, I don't. He said, I left when I was 5, but I'm in Nashville. But I would like you to do a little thing for me. Would you go on QVC next week? And I said, what for? Well, you could do your own 2 albums, and I have a few plans. When I meet, I'll talk with you about it. And they'll have a few other bits of albums of other people, of Irish artists they want you to talk about and sell. So I started doing that. Then I got the one in America, and I did it, and they turned $30 million every day, and I got 12 minutes out of their day. And we did a promotional video for TV, and he did an Irish album with me of 20 songs of Come Back Paddy Riley, I Live in History. I got picking them myself, but that's what I got doing, and I got doing that in Nashville with Mike Hedrick, and to me it was a super break, because I have to say, when you look at Omagh on the map and look at Ireland on the map and you think to yourself, when Mr. Toyce was trying to drum geography into me in the academy, I wasn't been quite sure where Chattanooga was, but I know now. Anyway, on the sessions I had a lot of people like Dolly Parton's sister Stella to sing, and Buddy Spiker playing the fiddle, and I had Gene Sisk out of the Kenny Rogers band playing piano, Tim Atwood who plays piano on the Opry band, Mike Hedrick, and several other people that wouldn't be as well known but are good players. Mm-hmm. Then I approached a man called Dr. Bill Anderson, who runs the Cowboy Churches. There's one in Pigeon Forge, and there's one in Nashville. There's others, there's one in Texas. But the one in Nashville runs in the Ernest Tubb Theatre, and it's the pastor in it is Pastor Yates, and he's married to Johnny Cash's sister Joanne.
Oh, yes, yes.
So I would do 3 songs each time I'm there, and it's good because I just reach my song chart numbers. They all read numbers for charts, and they can just play it. It sounds like the session band. They just play everything as it is. Right. So I get to do that, and then Leona Williams, I got to know her, who used to be married to Marilyn Haggard, with going back and forth, and she invited me onto the Ernest Tubb Theatre as her guest one night on the Midnight Jamboree, and I wouldn't have had those things if Charlie Tosh hadn't introduced me to Mike Hedrick. And you know how humble some people are. So Gene Sisk out of Kenny Rogers band, now the man has played with everybody on the recordings, and he plays with Kenny Rogers, superstar. And I'm just your wee man here from Omagh, doing my recordings, trying to do my best. And he came to me when we were doing the Irish album, and when I was doing things like Cottage by the Lee and I Live in Is Free, and he came over and he said, I have to shake hands with you. He said, I've never played any of those songs before. Chord sequences, the whole thing is unreal. Just love it. And I thought, for a man to even bother
of his caliber,
to say that to me, and he wanted to wish me well with it, he just thought the whole feel of the whole thing and the Irish songs that he wouldn't have done when Irish Eyes Were Smiling, when we were doing stuff like that, and he had never any reason to play it. He knew some of them.
Yeah.
So that led on anyway to the European playlist, and then Mike Hedrick had written me other songs. I'll just list the albums. First one was called All Over Again, and it's now on the Country Discovery record label in he's now moved to Jasper, which is a little town 2 miles down the road, and he has a recording studio over there, and it comes under www.countrydiscovery.com, and he's a number of other traditional country artists. Mike Hedrick would have been the band leader for Louise Mandrell, one of the Mandrell sisters, and he would have played in many sessions here and there.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking in terms of Nashville. I never realised that you recorded in Nashville. That's a revelation to me. It was
through really Charlie Toyce and introducing me to Mike Hedrick, and out of that I end up now with 8 different albums. I have a gospel album, an album of those Irish songs, 4 or 5 other albums which consist of country easy listening, and he would have written a number of songs like Waltzing Margarita, Feeling Is Believing, really, really nice songs.
Do most of your albums still sold on the internet, Derrick?
They are, and he would sell them on the internet. Here I would just do the smaller events that I'm playing at, because as I explained to you earlier,
QVC, do you still do voiceovers for them?
No, I haven't done that in a few years. Right. Actually, what happened was I had just done the United States a couple of years back, 3 years back, and I was to go to Germany.
Right.
And the man in America said to me, we have a new person in charge because the original person's on a sabbatical, and I doubt music's going to get the chop. And the week before that, Lionel Richie on. The week before that, Paddy Page. The week before that, Merle Haggard. They were selling stuff, and he says this guy doesn't like music. And when I got home, the letter was there to say, sorry, we're not doing music. And right enough, they'd stopped for some considerable time. That's why England had stopped.
Well, we'll not stop playing some music as well, but you're listening to Sweet Omagh Town here from the heart of Omagh Internet Radio. Our guest today is Derrick Mehaffey.
You can dance every dance with the guy who gives you the eye, let him hold you tight. You can smile every smile for the man who held your hand beneath the pale moonlight. But don't forget who's taking you home, and in his arms you're gonna be. So darling, save the last dance for me. Oh, I know that the music's fine, like sparkling wine. Go and have your fun, laugh and sing. But while we're apart, don't give your heart to anyone. But don't forget who's taking you home, and in his arms you're gonna be. So darling, save the last dance for me. Baby, don't you know I love you so? Can't you feel it when we touch? I will never ever let you go. I love you oh so much. You can dance, go and carry on till the night is gone and it's time to go. If he asks if you're all alone, can he take you home? You must tell him no. 'Cause don't forget who's taking you home, and in his arms you're gonna be. So darling, save the last dance for me. And don't forget who's taking you home, and in his arms you're gonna be. So darling, save the last dance for me. Yes, darling, save the last dance for me. Oh, baby, save the last dance for me. Yes, darling.
There goes Derrick Mehaffey and Save the Last Dance for Me.
Well, Derrick, would you count yourself as a country singer at heart then, or how would you identify your style of singing?
I like to think that I'm a country, easy listening singer with a smooth feel to it that it's not going to annoy anybody, and I try to sing a lot of songs that I really like now because I'm doing events that appeal to people of my own age group and older. And just on Wednesday I was doing a little job in Omagh at a dinner, and this man happened to be out in a lounge area, and he heard me singing Spanish Eyes, and when it was over he came racing in and said that was my favourite song. And I had said, but he didn't hear me say, I'm putting that on my new album when I get it finished. And he bought 3 albums, but he knew that the Spanish Eyes wasn't on it. But I get to do that sort of song, and I find that I was lucky enough to have recorded, which I liked, and the first album I did at Tony Allen's studio, 3 of the Jimmy Kennedy songs, which were, he wrote so many things, South of the Border, Harbour Lights, Red Sails and the Sunset. And Omagh Council gave me the privilege of opening the plaque at Osborne Terrace because I had recorded the songs that just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Mind you, they've only got up a little green plastic plaque. I thought they could have got a little better, but it's up anyway. And I got the business. But sometimes when I do that, when I'm away on tour in America, and I say, I'm so proud to say that I'm from the same town as Jimmy Kennedy, I would like to sing this song that Gene Autry had a huge hit with and many other people. And when I'm coming off afterwards talking to the fellas in the band, they're also very modest and humble, and some of them will come up and say to me, did you get that right? That guy has to be American. He couldn't be from where you're from. And I'm able to say, well, I'm sorry to say he was, yeah. So it's happening. They'll accept that that's right. Yeah. But his songs are so popular, Red Sails and the Sunset. And when I do Europe, I don't know whether it's the Seafaring thing or not, it's Red Sails and the Sunset, they'll sing it in Danish. and they'll do South of the Border. They all know it because they're watching All Americans.
Nice stuff, yeah.
Now, I also was lucky enough, the guy who used to be secretary called Shay Hennessy to my manager in Top Line Promotions, if I go back again, he now owns a record company called Connoisseur Records, and he would look after the affairs of Horslips and the Dubliners and many other people. But he took a license in the UK and Ireland and Europe on my gospel album. But a few years ago, 3 years ago, he got me to record my favourite Irish songs because he knew I had other Irish album. And I said to him when I got it all 20 tracks ready, he allowed me to pick what I wanted. I wanted to put in Silver Threads Among the Gold because that was my father's favourite song. So we got to do that, and I recorded it with Jerry Simpson and Drogheda. Jerry would play brother Spider Simpson, that used to be in the bands, but he would play with Mary Black, the piano player, with her on tour. Super player. Wife's a great singer, and he brought in a guitar player, and we did this in a small studio. And I did Maggie and Boys from County Armagh and things like that people seem to really like, Homes to Donegal. And when I get the cover proof to see what he was going to call the album, Shay very kindly called the album Silver Threads and Golden Memories, and he said he did that because he knew my parents, because they used to come to the TV shows with us in Dublin, and I thought it was very nice of him, because you don't often meet people who care about anything when there's money involved. So he did that, and I was just with him last week in Belfast actually, and 2 years ago I started an album with Mike Hedrick, and I have 12 tracks done on it, but I needed a few more, and I have had ongoing chronic sinus problem, so I feel I shouldn't record it till I'm ready to do that, and I have about 6 more songs which I'm ready to do, hopefully, and he's going to do that with me, and I have another gospel album, and I know that when I do things, I like Chris Christopherson songs. I have recorded Crying Time and help me make it through the night and For the Good Times, and one day at a time I'm just about to do that, and when I do that everybody seems to know it and everybody sings it. Some makes some people sad, but they like it. But consolation, have I got a moment just to say something? 2 years ago when I was going to record this album, I happened to, one of our friends was going, and he wanted his son to see the Amish people in Lancaster. So I looked up, I knew this theatre was there called the American Music Theatre, and I see my idol outside Jim Reeves singing is Ray Price. I can't believe this. $46 to see Crystal Gale and her band, Roy Clark and his band, and Ray Price and his band. Ray Price at that time was 82 and a half years old. He came onto the stage with a 13-piece band, 6 fiddles, 2 cellos and the rest, sailed through Release Me, and made comments like, I have to add that he doesn't say much, but he said that was BH, I mean before Humperdinck. In other words, he recorded it first. He did For the Good Times, and people were just in awe. I went out to the car after listening to him, and the whole thing, and I thought, $46 American dollars to see all that. And then I thought to myself, that man's 82 and a half. Do I keep going, or do I just go home and throw everything out and forget about it? He's so good, he's unreal. I really enjoyed it. And
of course he gave Willie Nelson his big break all those years ago.
That's right.
But Christopherson is writing as good as well as ever now. The songs are incredible. You know, and 74 and he's still playing the guitar.
The strange thing about it is I play some senior events now, and I get a great satisfaction out of it because my father-in-law had Alzheimer's before he died. My mother is suffering from dementia, among other things, and I go into the care home she's in, and I get a great satisfaction when I see them sitting singing some of those Jim Reeves songs, and you're singing something that's more happy. Even if it's a sad song, you do Red Sails in the Sunset, they're sitting singing. They like it because it's bringing back a lot of memories, and I must say that the next album will contain a few things like Mexicali Rose and, as I said, Spanish Eyes, and when I do that people like. But the strange thing, the last time I did the nursing care home where my mother is, there's a lot of young girls in doing auxiliary. There would be less than 20, and here they're sitting singing Lucille and Crystal Chandeliers and You're My Best Friend and Gypsy Woman. So when it's over, I'm saying, girls, please tell me, how do you know all these songs? That wouldn't be cool now to be knowing songs like that. They sang every word with the people. Most of them said, "My dad plays those since I was a baby, sure I know nothing else."
Absolutely.
And in other words, it is a great impression, and much and all as they would probably know about all the pop music when they actually hear a few songs they like. And I mean, if you do, which I do, Achy Breaky Heart and things like that for a more lively song, they're up to know all the words. They know Sweet Caroline. I do quite a lot of Neil Diamond songs. But my main thing would be, going back to what you said earlier, Declan, and almost the Jim Reeves thing, the Ray Price. I'm very much into the shuffle stuff that Ray Price does, My Shoes Keep Walking Back to You, and a lot of my recordings that Mike has written, like Long Time No See and that sort of song, Let's Cross the Bridge, have all been that shuffle, and that's what works for me in Europe. And I know musicians like it. If there's a good bass player in the band, he really likes shuffle if he can play it. The American bands can all play it.
Your gospel album, how did it go?
It is particularly good because I would do quite a lot of small church concert events, mostly for sort of senior people attend those, and even in the care homes, a lot of people find the songs meaningful. Now, I did a couple of Haggard songs. One of them was called Lord Don't Give Up On Me, and you know, I know for some people, there's a couple of people who ask me for that in particular when I go to a thing, and I know in one case it's a situation where the family situation for the woman wouldn't be that good, and she's sitting thinking what the words are saying. I'm just halfway there, but don't give up on me, and it's a great effect on people. But I also have a couple of up-tempo things. There's a Jim Reeves song called When God Dips His Love in My Heart that's popular, and I have an American, I've never heard anybody else do it, but an American gospel song that the record company gave me, and it's called Lord Walk With Us the Rest of the Way. And I get a lot of people asking about that. Well, then during my various trips to Nashville, well, it's south of Nashville, but I've been through Nashville, I got to meet this man called Dalton Robert. He would have been the chief executive of Chattanooga Municipal Council, a politician in other words, but he was a songwriter and one of these what he boys but a deep thinker. And I was doing a show, he had a TV show called The Pickin' Porch, and when it was all over he came to me and he said, I have a gospel song, I would like you to record it, and it's called I Wonder What He Wrote in the Sand. And I did record it, and it's amazing how many people ask me for that. Amazing. It's just got some sort of
just the message and the power of it,
yeah.
You know, maybe the
and then there was
simplicity.
another little man came into the studio one day in South Pittsburgh, and he was called Wayne Haley, and he told me himself, he had been in listening to me singing, and he said, I wonder would you record some of my songs. He said, I never could sing or write anything, but he said, I'll tell you quickly what happened. I'd been in the American Navy, came out and got married, got into drinking drugs, ended up on the street like a lot of them. And he said, I was outside this place one day lying on a pile, and the man came out and brought me in. It turned out to be one of these mission places, and he got him, talked to him and set him up and got him on the straight and narrow after a week or two and gave him somewhere to sleep and gave him something to eat. And somewhere or another they got the inspiration to put these words down, and he came along to Mike Hedrick, my producer, and said, look, I don't know how to put the music to this, but I've got a couple of songs, and they're on the gospel album there. And he asked me would I record some, so he gave me 12 songs, and I picked 2 of them, and I'm trying to think what the titles are, but they're on the albums there anyway. But they're popular as well because they're a meaningful thing.
Yeah, well, from the heart.
Yeah,
from the heart. What about the old time gospel? Do you touch this? Shall we gather at the river and the sweet by and by?
Well, I've done things like Living by Faith and some of the American ones. I'm trying to think. I didn't give you the gospel album,
you're okay,
so I can't remember all the tracks.
I think of the old. I was reared on 78s of Tennessee Ernie Ford, with the old harmonium playing in the background, and the kind of the
simple. Well, I've got a couple that's that sort of mountainy thing, because Mike Hedrick's actually an Alabama boy. He's from the hills in Alabama, and he would have been brought up on that guitar and harmonica and fiddle.
Are you a religious person yourself, Derrick?
Well, I don't go to church as often as I should, I suppose, but I do my best. I do my best.
Yeah, but the music, you know, it can bring out the best in people, and it makes you reflective of it. And some people would find, say, Christmas music incredibly sad because of the memories it brings back. Gospel music, I think, is the same effect on a lot of people.
But then there are some people. I was just coming out of a store in Omagh a few months ago, and I'd done a small event in a church, and I had that Jim Reeves song recorded in my gospel album called Supper Time. There's a narration in the middle, and I know the woman, she stopped me and she said, you know, I enjoyed the concert the other night, but you left me with tears in my eyes, and I was crying, and I said, I'm sorry, I didn't intend to do that, but what happened? She said, oh, you sang Supper Time, and she says, all I could reflect on, my mother had passed away 2 months ago, and I could just visualise my sister and me out at the back porch at Dromore, and you were singing this and going over the words, and I could hear the story unfold, and my mother calling me, but she says, I'll be back. I enjoyed it. So she did turn up in the next concert.
There's nothing like a song to bring you back to a time or place, is there?
I think people don't realise, even those young ones that I was talking about, that there's a sentimental thing in it, but there's a line. I suppose I often say I just wish I could write songs, and sometimes I try not to be too long-winded, but I would say I've looked into why a song was written. Like, for instance, that Jim Reeves song, He'll Have to Go, was one of the most popular ones I do. And do you know why that was
No,
written?
we don't know.
So the fellow called Joe Allison was a musician. I heard him relate this tale, and he was away on the West Coast playing with his band. So he called his wife home, to Nashville and said all the right things and I'll be home tomorrow. So any of these men listening, and this is how it's done. This is how you get through to the lady of your life. He mustered up all he could in his most romantic voice and got as close to the phone and got his deepest voice, and he said to her, "Put your sweet lips a little closer to the phone." So she wrote that down on a pad, and he came home the next evening and saw the pad sitting, saw this sitting, and she was called Audrey. So he thought, that's a pretty good line. And they sat down and they wrote "He'll Have to Go," as you know, and that became one of Jim Reeves' biggest hits.
Amazing.
And I'm sure you were probably aware of Jimmy Kennedy's song. I heard his son relate the tale that his sister, Jimmy's sister and his mother were in California, and they went down to visit Mexico, and they sent him a postcard and they just put "south of the border." And when he got the card, he thought, pretty good. When they got home, he had this written.
Just takes it,
just that inspiration.
I'm always fascinated because Mike Hedrick's a bit the same. I said to him in a case something, he wrote that long time no see, because Tennessee use a lot of sayings like we would do. I noticed when the fellas would come in, they would say things to me and I would have heard that at home, and you would think, well, we do that at home too. But Kim Dickinson, who's a local singer here, had come to me when she was starting off, and she recorded with Mike Hedrick and we got that arranged. I was out recording and I went into the control room for something. There was a few of the fellas and there was a break, and Mike said, "By the way, how's Kim about her about the new album, new CD?" And I said, "Oh, she's over the moon." So I went on ahead out, carried on, did my piece and came home. 3 weeks later I get the song, which was the title of my 5th album, with him. It was called "Over the Moon." He just got he thought the "Over the Moon" catch. He hadn't heard that before. Yes. And we use that at home all the time. Yes. Yeah. But he wrote this song and it worked. It worked. People in Europe like it.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing, looking at country music, the way it has changed, from I think of first time I became aware of it was through Jim Reeves.
Yeah.
And the Floyd Kramer sound. Ben Bradley was the producer, or Owen Bradley.
Yeah.
And of course Chet Atkins flavour, and then the way Willie Nelson and Waylon changed it with the outlaw music. But it's changed again, and I don't think it's necessarily changed for the better. It's become quite a business.
Well, it has, and I know I feel it's very like pop music. Yeah. I would be ones I like would be Alan Jackson, George Jones, George Strait, Gene Watson,
all singer-songwriters.
All the traditional singer-songwriters. Yeah. And my wife and I went to see George Strait once he came to Britain. He was in London doing one job. Tony Byworth brought him over, and it was incredible. I just really I have a lot of his albums. In fact, I covered some of his songs. That "Stew Out of My Arms" was a song of a George Strait album, and it was lucky for me because my first #1, which I was happy about. But those are the sort of people I would like, and Ray Price, of course, and Jim Reeves. And I'd spent a lot of time listening to all of those people, in particular Jim Reeves and Ray Price, trying to figure out how they sing as well as they do, because I can't. Yes. And I'm very fond of Cliff Richard now. I do a lot of Cliff Richard songs in my programme, but I don't do the updated stuff. And even when I go to Europe, to the places where they hear me singing country all the time, and even on the TV, they're asking me, would you sing a couple of Cliff songs, which I do, and they like it. He's so popular there in Europe.
Right.
But I can't sing as well as him either. But I have to keep singing and keep trying.
But you're still very much open for business, Derrick.
Yes. Well, I like Johnny Cash, by the way, very much.
Yes.
I am, but in a very limited fashion. I've had a couple of years of a problem between osteoarthritis and slight hearing loss, which has given me tinnitus, and it caused me a lot of trouble that I couldn't play with bands any longer.
Right.
And I just try to keep my hand in by doing what I can for small groups of perhaps older people or people my own age. The odd church event where anybody wants to listen to me, I go along if they ask me.
Okay.
But also to have the luxury now of being able to just pick and choose and do the songs you really want to do yourself. You're not restricted by a management saying this is what they want to hear now. You can now sort of take and say, I want to do that because I love that song, or it means so much to me.
Well, musicians, as you know, if they're good, they're usually very touchy and have all their own ways of doing things.
Yeah.
They don't like to be told anything, and yet at the end of it all, you have to decide if you know what you're doing, or somebody has given you a directive, you've got to do it whether you like it or not.
Yeah. And
I mean, I sing things that I don't particularly like because I know people like them, but the big advantage I would have at the moment is, number one, I'm using my band on a pre-recorded basis, but it's the Nashville band, and I know I'm going to hear the steel guitar, and I know I'm going to hear the fiddle, and I know it's going to be in the right key, and I know nobody's going to play any wrong chords, and I know nobody's going to talk back to me.
Yeah.
So I can select what I want, and I can judge as I'm going along what I think people want, and I try to do that. And if I see one thing they like, I do something similar to it.
Nashville, could you tell me what your impressions were when you first went to Nashville? Was it all that you dreamt of?
Not really, because first of all, when we arrived there, and my wife and I get off at Nashville Airport, nice airport, and get her. It's nice. If any airport could be called nice, it's a small little airport. It's nice and everything works. And incidentally, the first time we arrived, we're sitting behind Marty Stewart and his wife Connie Smith, and Connie Smith's one of my favourite country singers. We're sitting behind them on the plane, and anyway, we get in. But we had decided to stay at Music Valley, which is out where the Opry House is, only because we had never been, and we looked on the internet and thought this was the thing to do, and we wanted to go just to get a look around Music Valley. And we didn't get down Nashville until I had driven down to South Pittsburgh, which is 95 miles south of Nashville, or 25 miles northwest of Chattanooga, in the bottom of Tennessee. And then when we were coming back up, we went downtown Nashville. A lot of very, I suppose, prosperous and new looking buildings about it, like the Vanderbilt Hospital and various big places. The old Union Station has been renovated. But a lot of the places which you've seen on television, like Tootsie's and those sort of, they're just glorified lounge bars, but that's where it all happens. Same as out at Music Valley, they have a couple of places as well. These people who are like Randy Travis, who started off in those places, maybe waiting on a table and doing a bit of singing in between, and somebody record executive discovers them. So they go in. What astounded me most of all was we spoke there about John Huey off mic, who's played steel on Vince Gill and Conway Twitty and many other recordings. Super player. My wife and I went in one night to look at a band playing. We knew he was in it, and there's 4 young guys and him playing. At that time he was almost 80, and they play for 2 45-minute sets, and what they get for doing it is whatever the rest of us put into the ice cream tub when they pass it round. But when I talked to Mike Hedrick afterwards, I said, why would John Huey do that? He couldn't need him the dollars. He wants to keep himself sharp. And when I thought back, the young guys were shouting keys, A flat, E flat. That's all he got. Mm-hmm. He had to follow. Mm-hmm. And he loved this. But they are so good, unbelievably good. And there's guys out in the street wheeling a portable amplifier by battery operated job, and they're playing in the hope that somebody's going to hear them and think they're good. And the record companies were constantly getting rid of, even George Jones I think lost his record contract, and probably Haggard from what I heard too. So they just keep moving on all the time. But when we go to the Grand Ole Opry, we always make a point of doing that before we leave. And
what is the Opry like? It's
class, because first of all the sound level is superb, very luxurious, and as you probably know, in May it was flooded out, but it's reopened again. There was a huge flood. The river burst, the Cumberland burst its banks and destroyed the whole of downtown.
How many would it seat?
5,000. But you can come out and find your car, because there's a big Opry Mills shopping complex which isn't reopened since the flood, but huge car park. But it's not like trying to get out of a smaller event here. You can just walk out quite casually. There's buses organised, get your car and make your way out without traffic jams. But each act only does, except for the main act, maybe several songs, three songs with mostly the resident band. But because Tim Atwood, the piano player, played on my recordings, he brought my wife and I up backstage. So I had the opportunity to meet people like Garth Brooks, and there's a lot of other people there that I would never have thought, like George Hamilton, and we just missed Dolly by seconds one night. And David Ball, who wrote the title track of Don't Think Twice, the 6th album I had with Mike Hedrick, he was on when I got to meet him, and I had recorded a song that he had done, and it was nice because people like Bill Anderson, who are super songwriters, very approachable people, very nice, and you could sit up and sort of have and everything looks so dead casual, and yet it has to happen to the second, because it's going out on TV, part of it, and the rest of it's going out on radio. And it has to, and there's a big clock at the front of the stage, and somebody's giving these guys signals, you got to stop in so many seconds. Just like Don's doing to you and me, tell me to keep it going.
I didn't realise that.
It's class. It's really worth going. I mean, you're talking about something like that. I think it might be $40 now in for the show, and it's a 3-hour show, and it's really, really worth going to, I think.
And then the old Opry, it's preserved, is it?
Down in the Ryman, they run it down there from December onwards, and it's the old Mother Church of Country Music. It was an old church. We've been at it twice. It's nice, and it's a great feeling to walk in because of the history attached to it, and get up and stand on the stage where all these people used to be.
And are there guitars and costumes on
display? Yeah, and they have a small museum out at Music Valley, which we find we always stay out there because there's a lot of things there you can do. It's very accessible to the highway. 10 minutes you're into town. 15 if there's a lot of traffic. It's no big deal because it's not that big a place, but it's big enough as a city, but it's not difficult to negotiate. But we went to Church Street Station one night down at the bottom of the town, And in there, this girl called Dawn Sears, who's the wife of the Phyllis Sears, the fiddle player in the Opry band. And she sang Sweet Memories, which is Ricky Van Shelton and Andy Williams' song. The hair stood on my head. She is just unbelievably good. And these guys like Paul Franklin and 6 or 8 musicians are in, and they just go in there and they play for the same thing. You pay admission and they get something out of it. Right. And you can go in and sit in this sort of lounge place. It's only a small admission, and they're playing, and these players are unbelievably good, and they're playing traditional country.
Yeah.
It's just good. It's worth knowing to do it, and an experience, we think. And then we took a few of the tours around the city to see the different...
What about Brownston? Did you
we've been there. We stayed there twice.
What's it like? What's the atmosphere?
To me, it's okay. Well, I was lucky enough to be on the Wembley Festival. Tony Lockman, when I was with him, brought me over to it, and out of that... I met Mo Bandy and a few people, and we went to his theatre, and he brought me up on stage to sing because he remembered me when we talked outside before we went on. And I got doing South of the Border with him, and we went along to see several of the other shows like Leona Williams that we knew, and Jim Stafford. I thought it was class. I think
Andy Williams has a resident.
Andy Williams, but there's so many.
I think at one stage
he had, and there's so many things on, and the Osmonds one, they have sold theirs on, I believe, and Ray Stevens, I think he's sold his now. I like him. He's got a super band. It's very good.
He had the gimmicky records years ago.
That's right. Streak and things like that.
That's right.
But there's a lot of variety. But you see a lot of people that go on these tours that are currently going out with the Irish bands, and I think they can take tours out around. But I'm not sure that they're into the modern country music, and people like Haggard and them are not probably appearing as much.
Okay. Any future plans, Derek, before we let you go for the afternoon?
Well, as I had said earlier, I'm hoping to try and get these albums finished if I get myself back to normality and get my voice back to where it should be. And I want to thank you, Don, and thank you very much for having us on.
Pleasure, sir.
It's been an absolute revelation.
Wonderful. And I want to wish all the listeners out there a very happy Christmas from Omagh.
Thank you.
That's what
this is all about. Exactly.
A little piece of Omagh.
And just for those who were in Australia, our record Power of Love, the first one you played, Shay Hennessy, that man who owns Connoisseur, sent it to his friend, and it got into the charts on Radio 2UW in Sydney, and we thought we were going to Australia, but it didn't happen.
Sometime in the future. Derek, thanks again.
Thank you, Don.
Take care. Bye bye.
Red sails in the sunset, way out on the sea. Oh, carry my loved one home safely to me. She sailed at the dawning. All day I've been blue. Red sails in the sunset, I'm trusting in you. Swift winds you must borrow, make straight for the shore. We'll marry tomorrow, and she'll go sailing no more. Red sails in the sunset, way out on the sea. Oh, carry my loved one home safely to me. Red sails in the sunset, way out on the sea. Oh, carry my loved one home safely to me. She sailed at the dawning. All day I've been blue. Red sails in the sunset, I'm trusting in you. Red sails in the sunset, I'm trusting in you.